There is a moment, perhaps brief, perhaps infinite, when we look at the world and wonder if what we see is truly real. Not just real in the sense of being consistent or tangible, but real in the deeper sense. Authentic, ultimate, true. A tree sways in the wind, and we know it's there. But is it there as it truly is, or merely as it appears to us? In ancient Indian philosophy, this question takes shape in a concept both poetic and disquieting: the veil of Maya. Maya does not simply mean illusion. It is the illusion of separation, the illusion of duality, the illusion that what we perceive is the totality of existence. Maya is not falsehood in the way a lie is false. It is a dream so complete, so immersive, that we forget we are dreaming. The veil is not something we look at. It's something we look through, every day, every moment. This idea found a powerful echo in the 19th century writings of German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, who was deeply influenced by Hindu thought. For Schopenhauer, the world as we experience it, the world of objects, identities, and causality, is a representation, not reality itself. He called it Vorstellung, a construct of the mind. What lies behind the veil, he believed, is a singular, undivided will, an impersonal force driving all phenomena, from the orbits of planets to the desires of a single heart. But how can we know what's behind the veil, if everything we experience is shaped by the veil itself? This dilemma is not just metaphysical, it is psychological, cognitive, even social. In modern terms, we might say that each person walks through life wearing tinted glasses. These lenses are shaped by evolution, culture, language, and memory. What we see, we do not see directly. We interpret. The neuroscientist Donald Hoffman argues that our perception evolved not to show us the truth, but to help us survive. The interface of consciousness, our senses, our categories, presents us not with the world as it is, but with a user-friendly model. Like icons on a computer screen, what we perceive is a simplification, a translation. And this is not merely speculation. Consider the famous invisible gorilla experiment by Simons and Chabris. Subjects watching a video of people passing basketballs are so focused on counting the passes that many fail to notice a person in a gorilla suit walking through the scene. The gorilla was there, but to their minds it was not. The veil is not just philosophical, it is cognitive, and it is not only individuals who are veiled. Whole societies, entire eras, live under shared illusions. The belief in economic growth is synonymous with progress, the assumption that nature exists to serve humanity, the myth of constant productivity. These two are forms of Maya, woven not into the senses, but into culture and language. We rarely question them, because they are the background of our thinking. Ludwig Wittgenstein, the Austrian philosopher, once wrote that, "The limits of my language mean the limits of my world." In this light, the veil is also linguistic. What we cannot name, we cannot see. What we cannot question, we cannot escape. But then, what does it mean to lift the veil? Some traditions speak of awakening. The Buddha, whose very name means the awakened one, taught that suffering arises from attachment to illusions, from clinging to names, roles, forms. Enlightenment is not the acquisition of new knowledge, but the dissolution of false identities. It is the recognition that the self is not separate from the world, and the world is not as it appears. Yet awakening is not a moment of triumph. It is often quiet, even unsettling. To lift the veil is to lose what we thought we knew. It is to step out of the theater of appearances and into something without stage or script. And still we live here, on this side of the veil. We speak, we feel, we suffer, we love. The veil may never fully fall, perhaps it cannot. But to know that it exists changes how we live beneath it. It invites humility. It reminds us that others may see differently, not because they are wrong, but because they wear different veils. We can learn perhaps not to tear away the veil in frustration, but to see its patterns, to recognize its colors, to become aware that what we see is not all there is. In doing so, we may begin to live not with certainty, but with clarity. And maybe that is enough. Imagine standing on a vast shoreline, watching the waves roll in. Each wave seems familiar, predictable, shaped by tides and winds. But then someone asks, "Why are you here, on this beach, in this moment, capable of asking such a question?" Not just biologically, but cosmically. The moment stretches. The sand beneath your feet, the atmosphere around you, the star above you. It all seems remarkably calibrated, as if the universe had quietly prepared a place at the table just for you. This is the kind of unsettling awareness that leads us to the anthropic bias, or the anthropic principle. At first glance, it sounds innocent. The idea that any observation we make about the universe is conditioned by the fact that we exist to make it. But look more closely, and it becomes a hall of mirrors. Philosophical, statistical, existential. Why does the universe appear to be fine-tuned for life? Is it truly special? Or are we just seeing what we are able to see by necessity? The term anthropic comes from the Greek anthropos, meaning human. The bias occurs when we draw conclusions about the universe without accounting for the unavoidable fact that our very existence filters our observations. It's like waking up inside a house and marveling that the furniture fits you perfectly, without considering that you may have only woken up in houses that could support human life to begin with. This kind of reasoning has powerful implications, especially in cosmology. The constants of physics, gravitational strength, the charge of the electron, the expansion rate of the universe, seem improbably precise for life to emerge. If any of them were slightly different, stars might not form, chemistry might not work, consciousness might never arise. To some, this suggests intention or design, but to others, like physicist Brandon Carter, who coined the anthropic principle in the 1970s, it suggests something subtler. Selection bias on a cosmic scale. We observe a universe compatible with life because, quite simply, we are here. If the universe weren't compatible with observers, there would be no one to notice. This does not explain the universe's structure. It explains the observer's limitation. As Richard Dawkins pointed out, it's like a puddle being amazed that the hole it fills fits it so perfectly. But the anthropic bias goes beyond physics. It touches evolutionary biology, probability theory, and even existential risk. Consider the doomsday argument, proposed by thinkers like John Leslie and Brandon Carter. If you assume you are a randomly placed human in the timeline of our species, then statistically, it's unlikely you live in the very earliest generations. Therefore, it's more probable that humanity is closer to its end than its beginning. The logic is slippery and controversial, but it's rooted in anthropic reasoning. We think we are typical, and that belief shapes our expectations. Daniel Kahneman, a pioneer of cognitive psychology, might remind us here that humans are notoriously poor at accounting for bias, especially when the bias is invisible. The anthropic bias is not like an optical illusion we can detect and correct. It is baked into our presence. We can never observe a universe in which we do not exist. This invites a humbling thought. Our data set, the universe we see, is not a random sample. It is filtered by the precondition of life. That means many apparent puzzles, like the fine-tuning of physical constants or the rarity of alien civilizations, may not require dramatic answers. They may simply reflect that only in certain kinds of universes do beings like us arise and ask such questions. And yet, this line of thought can become dangerously circular. It risks explaining away mystery with tautology. It is this way because otherwise we wouldn't be here to notice. That may be true, but is it satisfying? Or is it a philosophical blindfold, protecting us from the abyss of the unknown? In the end, the anthropic bias teaches restraint. It warns us against drawing universal conclusions from a single data point, ourselves. It reminds us that being the observer is not the same as being the standard, and it challenges our natural human tendency to place ourselves at the center, not just of history or biology, but of the cosmos itself. Perhaps the deepest lesson is not about the universe, but about humility, that we are not the measure of all things, but the measured. That the universe does not owe us an explanation tailored to our minds, that we are, in a sense, cosmic latecomers, trying to read the script of a play already in motion, and maybe, knowing that, we can learn to observe more carefully, to question more deeply, and to wonder, not at why the universe fits us, but how we came to believe it ever should. There is a certain silence that follows disappointment, not the loud, angry kind, but a quiet unraveling, the moment when hope, once vibrant and forward-reaching, slips from your grasp. You sit with the realization that what you longed for may never come. And yet, impossibly, the next morning, something in you dares to hope again. This is the strange resilience and danger of hope. It inspires revolutions and personal transformation, but it also keeps people waiting forever at doors that will never open. Philosophically, this tension gives rise to what we might call the problem of hope. How can we reconcile the essential role hope plays in human life with its frequent betrayal? Is hope a virtue or a delusion? To live without hope is to fall into despair, but to live only with hope is to risk never truly living at all. The ancient Greeks knew this paradox well. In the myth of Pandora, when she opens the jar, often mistranslated as a box, she releases all the evils into the world: disease, suffering, deceit. But one thing remains trapped inside: elpis, usually translated as hope. Some interpret this as a blessing spared, others as the final curse. Was hope withheld to preserve it as a balm for human suffering? Or was it left behind because hope itself is a kind of illusion, an evil dressed in sweetness? Friedrich Nietzsche was unambiguous in his stance. He called hope the worst of all evils because it prolongs the torment of man. To him, hope was not courage. It was avoidance, an opiate that kept people obedient, passive, chained to false expectations. In this view, true strength comes not from hoping for a better future, but from confronting life as it is, without comforting fictions. And yet, it is hard to deny hope's psychological function. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, observed that those who survived the camps often had one thing in common: the belief that their suffering had meaning, that there was something ahead worth enduring for. Without that forward-looking thread, people withered. Hope in his eyes was not an escape, but a lifeline. So which is it, poison or medicine? The answer may lie not in hope itself, but in its object. What do we hope for? When hope is tied to things we cannot control, a person changing, a system reforming, an outcome turning in our favor, it becomes fragile, even dangerous. It becomes passive waiting, as Kierkegaard might say, rather than active becoming. But when hope is grounded in our own capacity to act, to respond, to endure, it transforms into something more like courage. This distinction echoes the Stoic philosophers. They did not reject hope outright, but they were deeply cautious of it. For them, hope and fear were two sides of the same coin, both tied to attachment, both distortions of reason. Epictetus urged us to focus not on outcomes, but on intentions, discipline, virtue. Do not hope for events to happen as you wish, he said. Rather, wish for them to happen as they do, and your life will flow smoothly. Modern psychology offers a softer but similar view. Psychologist Charles Snyder defined hope not just as wishful thinking, but as the belief that one can find pathways to desired goals and has the agency to pursue them. In this framework, hope is not passive optimism, but strategic imagination. It requires clarity, adaptability, and action. And yet, even rational hope can turn tragic. People stay in toxic relationships, clinging to the belief that things will change. Patients chase miracle cures. Societies wait for justice that never comes. In each case, hope becomes a kind of spiritual inertia, a refusal to accept what is because of what might be. This is the problem. Hope comforts and blinds. It sustains and sedates. It keeps us alive, but sometimes only so we can keep suffering longer. So what are we to do? Perhaps the answer is not to abolish hope, but to refine it. To shift from hope as expectation to hope as attitude. Not the belief that things will get better, but the decision to remain open to meaning, to growth, to unexpected good, even when the odds are low. This is the kind of hope that doesn't require naivety or denial. It's the hope found in Camus's myth of Sisyphus, where the absurd hero pushes his boulder up the hill, fully aware of the futility, and still finds freedom in the struggle. It's the hope that endures, not because it predicts a happy ending, but because it affirms life itself, moment by moment. Hope, then, is not a promise. It is a posture. And maybe, in a world full of uncertainty and loss, that is enough. Not to believe blindly in a better future, but to live in such a way that, even if it never comes, we will have been fully human in the waiting. There was a time, so some thinkers suggest, when the human mind was not as it is today, when consciousness, as we now experience it, had not yet emerged. People spoke, acted, obeyed, but not from inner reflection. Instead, they heard voices, commands, not metaphorically, but literally, hallucinated voices that came from within, yet were perceived as external. Gods, ancestors, kings, the voice of authority resounding inside the mind. This is the radical thesis of the bicameral mind, proposed by psychologist Julian Jaynes in the 1970s. According to his theory, early humans were not introspective in the way modern humans are. They lacked what we call subjective consciousness, inner narration, self-awareness, metacognition. Instead, their brains operated in a divided fashion. One part, likely in the right hemisphere, generated speech and guidance in times of stress or uncertainty. The other, the left hemisphere, received and obeyed. Janes called this split bicameralism, literally two chambers, like a two-room parliament of the mind. And in this arrangement, thought was not internal dialogue, but external command. It's a disturbing idea. It suggests that for most of human history, people were not truly aware in the way we are. They did not deliberate, doubt, or reflect. They acted on impulses that felt divine. Their lives were guided not by conscience, but by command hallucinations. And crucially, they did not know these voices were their own. Janes pointed to ancient texts to support his theory. In early epics like the Iliad, characters often act under direct instruction from gods. Achilles does not ponder his anger. He is seized by it, provoked by a goddess. There is little mention of inner thought, no clear sense of personal responsibility. But by the time of the Odyssey, centuries later, internal struggle begins to appear. Odysseus lies, strategizes, remembers. The mind begins to turn inward. What changed? Janes argues that the breakdown of bicameralism came with increasing societal complexity. As civilizations grew, so did unpredictability. The old voice command system could not adapt to new pressures, war, trade, politics. The hallucinated voices faltered. Silence fell. And into that silence, a new structure emerged: introspective consciousness, a private self. The metaphor of the mind's eye took shape. This view is controversial. Many neuroscientists and historians reject Janes's ideas as speculative, too reliant on ambiguous texts and bold leaps. There is little direct evidence of a neurological transition so recent and profound. And yet, the question he raised remains provocative. Is consciousness a given or an invention? If we entertain Janes's theory, even as metaphor, it reframes much of what we consider human. It suggests that our sense of self is not an eternal flame, but a cultural construction, fragile, historical, recent. That the I who thinks and chooses is not the baseline of human experience, but a hard-won development, perhaps still incomplete. And this invites deeper questions. Are there still remnants of the bicameral mind today? Some might point to phenomena like schizophrenia, where voices are heard without conscious control, or the way religious visions, trance states, or deep meditation can blur the boundary between inner and outer authority. In moments of trauma or heightened stress, people often report hearing guidance, sometimes interpreted as God, intuition, or ancestral wisdom. Perhaps these are echoes of a time when such experiences were not rare, but standard. Janes also warns us about the fragility of consciousness. If it emerged under pressure, it could dissolve under pressure. A world overwhelmed by complexity, automation, or ideological control might push the mind to revert, to look again for voices to follow, rather than thoughts to think. In a time where algorithms suggest our choices, where charismatic figures command devotion, and where inner reflection is replaced by constant input, we might ask, are we at risk of becoming bicameral again? The mind, after all, is not fixed. It is shaped by language, culture, habit, and need. And if consciousness is a cultural artifact, then so is the loss of it. To be conscious is not merely to be awake. It is to be aware that one is aware, to pause, reflect, and choose. It is not a voice we hear, but a space we hold, a quiet chamber where we meet ourselves. And perhaps that chamber is always at risk of being closed. There are landscapes that evoke silence not because they are quiet, but because they seem to have forgotten how to speak. The moral desert is one such place. It stretches across institutions, corporations, online spaces, and sometimes even within ourselves. Not barren in the physical sense, but emptied of meaning, stripped of ethical life. Things continue, transactions proceed, but something essential is missing: a sense of right, of duty, of human presence behind the machinery. The term moral desert doesn't refer to a place where no one deserves anything. Rather, it describes a state of affairs where questions of deserving no longer matter, because the moral fabric that connects actions to consequences has been worn thin. It's the sense you get when systems reward the powerful, regardless of virtue, when accountability is cosmetic, when suffering becomes abstract data on a spreadsheet. In such a desert, rules may still exist, but they operate like mirages, visible from a distance, always just out of reach. People follow procedures not because they believe in them, but because that's what the job requires. The language of values is still used but hollowed out. Ethics reduced to branding, empathy outsourced to customer service scripts, justice delayed until it no longer matters. The philosopher Michael Sandel speaks of this erosion when he critiques meritocracy. In theory, merit-based systems reward effort and talent, but in practice, they often mask inherited privilege and deepen inequality. Worse, they create a moral illusion that those who succeed must deserve their success, and those who fail must deserve their suffering. In such logic, empathy dries up, the desert expands, and yet the problem is older than our current systems. Hannah Arendt, reflecting on the Holocaust and the trial of Adolf Eichmann, coined the phrase, the banality of evil, to describe how great atrocities are often carried out not by monsters, but by ordinary people who have stopped thinking ethically. Eichmann did not appear cruel. He appeared obedient. He claimed he was just following orders. In the moral desert, this is how evil spreads, not with passion, but with indifference. The moral desert is not filled with villains. It is populated by functionaries, careerists, influencers, investors, people doing their jobs, meeting KPIs, optimizing outcomes. There is no storm, no fire, no obvious villainy, just the dry wind of abstraction. Human suffering becomes a side effect, a regrettable but acceptable trade-off. So what does it take to survive or resist such a place? Perhaps the first step is to notice it, to feel the dryness, to admit the discomfort. The desert feeds on numbness. It thrives when people stop asking why. And that's what makes even a single act of conscience radical. A whistleblower in a corrupt agency, a worker who refuses to cut corners, a programmer who won't design addictive algorithms. These are not grand gestures. They are small wells dug into dry ground. Albert Camus wrote, "The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion." In a moral desert, to act with integrity, quietly, persistently, is an act of rebellion. To care, even when it's inefficient. To speak, even when the room is silent. But the danger is real. The desert is exhausting. It can wear down even the most idealistic among us. That's why moral resilience is not just about principles. It's about connection. No one survives the desert alone. We need relationships that nourish the ethical imagination, communities that still ask difficult questions, spaces where truth is more important than performance. And we need to remember that the desert is not natural. It is made, maintained, justified. But what is made can be unmade. What is dry can be watered, not quickly, not easily, but perhaps steadily, quietly, like rain on sand, soaking in, unseen at first, until life begins to return. To live in a moral desert is to be tempted by apathy, but to resist it is to reclaim the possibility of meaning, of consequence, of humanity. Even in the driest places, seeds wait. There is a part of us we do not like to name. It follows us quietly, shaping thoughts we disown, fueling impulses we pretend not to feel. It speaks in moments of anger, envy, lust, fear. It watches silently when we lie, when we judge, when we fail to act. We call it the shadow, and though it walks behind us, it is never far from who we are. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist, gave this darkness a name not to condemn it, but to understand it. For him, the shadow represents the aspects of ourselves that we repress or deny, the traits, memories, and desires that do not fit our image of who we are supposed to be. Not necessarily evil, but incompatible with the persona we present to the world. The shadow is formed not because we are wicked, but because we are divided. From a young age, we are taught what is acceptable, what earns love, respect, security. We learn to smile when angry, to comply when afraid, to silence doubt in the name of belonging. Bit by bit, a split forms. The conscious self, shaped by ideals and norms, and the unconscious self, composed of all that was cast out. That cast-out self becomes the shadow, but what is repressed does not vanish. It waits. It leaks through sarcasm, dreams, addictions, projections. It erupts in crises, sabotages relationships, distorts perception. We see our shadow more clearly in others than in ourselves. The traits we most criticize or hate in people around us often reflect something unresolved within. This is projection, a psychological mirror we mistake for a window. In politics, it appears when citizens vilify a group for the very qualities their own society suppresses. In religion, when purity leads to obsession with sin. In personal life, when the need to be good leads to secret resentments, hypocrisy, and shame. But the shadow is not merely a psychological glitch, it holds energy. Jung believed that within the shadow lies a key to wholeness. By facing it, we recover lost parts of ourselves. Instincts, creativity, power. The goal is not to destroy the shadow, but to integrate it, to bring awareness to what we deny, and make space for contradiction without collapse. This is dangerous work. It requires humility, honesty, and the courage to stand in front of a mirror that shows more than we want to see. It means admitting that we are not always kind, just, or wise, that under pressure we are capable of things we swore we would never do. But without that recognition, we remain fragmented, performing light, while hiding the source of our darkness. And so we wear masks, we curate identities, we moralize, we condemn others to avoid confronting ourselves. Entire cultures can become shadowed, built on myths of innocence while ignoring histories of violence or exclusion. The brighter the facade, the darker the hidden cost. To live with the shadow is to refuse the false safety of purity. It is to say, I am not whole without my darkness. I am not honest without my contradictions. This does not mean giving in to every impulse, nor excusing cruelty. Integration is not indulgence, it is responsibility. It is the long, painful work of making peace with our inner exiles. And paradoxically, it is this peace that allows us to choose better. When we see the shadow, we are no longer controlled by it. When we name our darkness, we begin to understand the darkness in others, not to justify it, but to break the chain of unconscious reaction. Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The shadow, unnamed, becomes destiny. Named, it becomes a companion, strange, unwanted, but real. And real things can be spoken to, challenged, even befriended. So we turn to face the silhouette on the wall, the voice in the quiet, the thought we tried to bury. And we say, I see you. You are mine. You are not all of me, but you are part of me. And in that moment, the shadow takes a step closer, not to consume us, but to rejoin us, not to destroy the self, but to make it whole. There is a wheel that turns endlessly, not a wheel of fortune, nor a wheel of progress, but a wheel of becoming, a cycle without clear beginning or end, life, death, rebirth, again and again. Joy flashes, suffering returns, moments pass like dreams, and still the wheel spins. This is samsara, the eternal turning, the ceaseless wandering through existence. To be caught in it is not merely to live, it is to be trapped in a loop so vast that even eternity seems too small to contain it. In the ancient traditions of India, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, samsara is the realm of ordinary existence, ruled by craving, aversion, and delusion. It is not a place, but a condition. The condition of being born into ignorance, of chasing desires that dissolve, of fleeing fears that return in new forms. One life ends, another begins. New body, new name, same hunger. To exist in samsara is to forget who we are, what we seek, why we suffer. We become actors in a play we do not remember joining, driven by scripts we did not write. Every attachment, whether to power, pleasure, identity, or even love, binds us more tightly to the wheel. And the tragedy is not in dying once, but in dying many times, never understanding why we are reborn. This is not merely metaphysical doctrine, it is existential metaphor. Samsara reflects something deeply human, our tendency to repeat patterns, to relive old wounds, to remake our suffering in different costumes, the toxic relationship that reappears with a new face, the ambition that, once satisfied, gives birth to a deeper void, the anxiety that shifts form but never leaves. Modern psychology has its own language for this. Carl Jung spoke of complexes and archetypes that loop within the psyche, shaping our behavior from the shadows. Behavioral scientists observe how trauma and conditioning create cycles of reaction, trapping us in feedback loops. We may leave a place, a person, a job, but find ourselves repeating the same choices, the same mistakes. Samsara is not elsewhere. It is here now, in every impulse we cannot explain, every illusion we refuse to let go of. And still, it is so easy to forget we are turning, because the wheel disguises itself as motion, as progress. It seduces us with goals, milestones, pleasures. It offers the fantasy that this time will be different, that this promotion, this partner, this achievement will be the one that satisfies. But samsara has no exit through success. It promises fulfillment only to demand it again. That is why in Buddhist teaching, liberation, nirvana, is not found through accumulation, but through awakening, not through becoming more, but by seeing more clearly. To escape the torment of samsara is not to escape life itself, but to stop clinging to the illusions that keep us bound, the illusion of a fixed self, of permanence, of control. But awakening is rare, because letting go is hard, because even suffering can feel familiar, comforting. We fear the unknown more than we fear the known pain. So we stay, we repeat, we suffer, and the wheel turns. There is a haunting beauty in this vision, a cosmos where justice is not imposed, but inherent, where every act seeds the conditions of the next life, where our liberation is not given, but earned through understanding. Yet this beauty hides a deep weariness, the weariness of souls circling endlessly, forgetting their own footsteps. Some traditions say that even the gods are not free, that divine beings, radiant and blissful, too must fall when their karma runs out. No realm within samsara is safe. Pleasure fades, power fades, memory fades. Only awareness endures, and only it can point the way out. To reflect on the torment of samsara is to feel both the weight of being and the urgency of waking up. It is to ask, how many times must I suffer the same lesson before I see the pattern? How many lives will I live before I stop identifying with what changes? Perhaps the greatest terror of samsara is not hellfire, but forgetfulness. The fact that we have been here before, that we will be here again, and that each time we may forget what we once knew. But even in this cycle there is a whisper of hope, because to know the wheel is turning is already to step back from it. To see samsara is the beginning of freedom, and in that quiet seeing, perhaps we stop spinning, if only for a moment.